Hello, I'm David Lloyd from Tai Pawb, and I'm having a chat today with Ross Thomas from an organisation called Tai Pawb. And in this conversation, we'll find out a bit more about LGBTQ plus History Month, which is in February, and plus some of the LGBTQ plus issues, housing related issues affecting that community as well. So welcome, Ross. Ross, firstly, can you tell us a bit about Tai Pawb?
Thanks, David. Diolch am y gwahoddiad, diolch am y cyfle. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity to chat with you today. So, Tai Pawb. Tai Pawb is Wales's leading equality and diversity charity in the field of housing. Tai Pawb imagines a Wales where everyone has the right to a good home, and we work with our membership base, which, like yourselves at Tai Pawb, is made up of housing providers and like-minded organisations, to really champion and promote equality and diversity and inclusion. Absolutely delighted, of course, David, as you know, that Tai Pawb is a member of Tai Pawb and vice versa. So as partners, we have a fab relationship, and we have done, and I would like to say absolutely in the future, we will continue to do a lot of really good work together.
Definitely agree there. And lots of information, some good stuff on your website. So anyone interested in the work of Tai Pawb, what they're doing, definitely check out their website and social medias as well. So Ross, kind of it's LGBTQ plus History Month. Can you tell us a bit about what that is and what's the aim of it and what's it all about?
Absolutely. This is really topical, David. So thanks very much. LGBT plus History Month is celebrated every year in February. It's not new. It's a fabulous opportunity. That's what it is, to stop, reflect, look back, take stock, and recognise the journey of LGBT plus rights. We know, working from a rights-based position, we know that rights for whatever minoritized group are always hard fought for and hard won, but so very easily watered down and scrapped. So vigilance on these rights is key. It's also a fab juncture, I think, in LGBT plus History Month to raise awareness, educate ourselves, and to challenge, or even, for want of a better phrase, re-challenge our bias and our prejudice. Allyship is hugely important. What I mean by allyship, I mean you don't have to recognise yourself as LGBT plus to recognise or participate or enjoy LGBT plus History Month. Allies, friends, those who aren't LGBT plus but recognise prejudice are just as important, I think, if not more so, in calling out hate and ensuring common sense and acceptance wins over. Ultimately, it's a time to celebrate achievements, come together as one community, LGBT plus people and allies, and celebrate that diversity. So in the UK, it's only in the last decade that civil partnerships and marriage of two people of the same sex has been permitted, for example. And it really wasn't that long ago that being gay was considered to be a mental illness in the UK. Homosexuality was illegal until the mid-60s. We're really lucky in Wales to have a government that wants to make our country, in the First Minister's words, the most LGBT plus friendly country in Europe. And Tai Pawb, alongside other organisations, we're really pleased to feed into that consultation on the action plan as well. Really, really sad thought here. It's 2022. There are a significant number of nations the world over where being LGBT plus wouldn't just disadvantage you, but would very much put your safety at risk as well. So it's absolutely vital that we recognise the gains that we've made here and large parts of Europe, but moreover use our influence on the world stage to push fundamental human rights where nobody is discriminated against as a result of their sexuality or gender. I think that's hugely important and something we need to take stock of in LGBT plus History Month.
Okay. I'm thinking about housing now. What might be some of the sort of housing related issues faced by people in the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, actually. Like any minority groups, there are specific issues. Although at this point, I think it's worth just highlighting that they can be intersectional across protected characteristics. So it could be gender, race, disability, poverty. But above and beyond what might be prejudice, I'm thinking here of two groups in particular, younger LGBT plus people and older LGBT plus people. On the former, younger people, Llamau and End Youth Homelessness Cymru have done some fantastic work, research work, in recent years into homelessness. So we know, for example, that LGBT plus younger people are overrepresented overrepresented in homelessness figures in Wales. The reasons for this, well, they are really varied, but we can pinpoint things like family breakdown as a result of coming out to parents or carers, or possibly struggling to come to terms with the crisis of identity. Several things can really take hold and combine into a really horrible situation whereby younger LGBT plus people really feel the need to flee or are even forced into homelessness. So that's one group. The second group I wanted to mention was older people. So anecdotal evidence suggests that older people can find it really difficult to remain open about their sexuality as a direct result of differences in traditional opinion. So for example, take someone born in the 50s or 60s versus someone born in the 90s or early 2000s. Public opinion, rights and attitudes across those sort of 40, 50, 60 years has really changed, broadly speaking. They were very different, where that general tolerance back then and acceptance wasn't widespread at all. This anecdotal evidence, I would say, appears to particularly affect older people who are living in sheltered or a shared accommodation, whereby they perhaps feel they can't be themselves. So those are two groups that come to my mind straight away in terms of specific issues affecting LGBT plus people in the housing sector.
And so what could landlords and perhaps even other tenants do to be a bit more inclusive of the LGBT plus community? So
another really good question. And if I concentrate particularly on the two issues I've mentioned, younger and older people in particular, there are recommendations and guidance from that research actually. So with Llamau and End Youth Homelessness Cymru, for example, that report is asking for better support for younger LGBT plus people across the housing sector. In particular funding, no surprises there. We all need more funding for support. But in this particular instance, whereby funding can better support their excellent services at their Tea Pride facility, for example, it's a one-stop shop that's a huge help to young and homeless LGBT plus younger people. What we need is a Tea Pride in every region of Wales. That would be absolutely fab. So that's one thing. For older people, for example, we worked with an organisation called EROSH, who helpfully produced an award-winning guide, actually, for providers of sheltered accommodation in particular, supporting those providers and staff in those settings to work with tenants to build a better understanding of LGBT plus issues, and importantly, to root out prejudice. So the essence of that report then was that it isn't just about rainbow flags on windows, which does help demonstrate an inclusive environment. It's about hearts and minds as well. A couple of other things, just off the top of my head, up-to-date training for staff, always a great positive, asking questions where it's appropriate and safe to do so, but from a position, need to remember this, from a position of respect, tolerance, and a willingness to understand what the answer might be. Certainly for social housing providers and other like-minded partners like ourselves, understanding the profile of your staff, your board, and your tenants can be really handy. Are figures representative of local or national demographics? If not, why not? It's about a diverse workforce as well. International research will tell us that the more diverse a workforce and the more diverse a governing body, such as a board, the better decisions that are made, absolutely, and the better outcomes for people as well. And then certainly last but not least, allyship. So I mentioned allyship, that concept of not having to be LGBT plus to be able to support LGBT plus people. I like the quote, it doesn't have to happen to you to matter to you. That's fundamental in this sense, as far as I'm concerned, as it should be for so many socially just causes. So lots of practical ideas there, and I'm sure people can contact yourselves at Tai Pawb, landlords can, for further advice and support in actually being a bit more inclusive as well. Absolutely. Ross, lastly, before we finish, how can people find out a bit more about LGBTQ History Month, how to support it, how to get involved? So lots of LGBT plus organisations or allied organisations and partners will be running events such as webinars and forums and sharing resources right the way throughout February. I think it's really important that landlords and tenants feel that they're an active part of LGBT plus History Month. So pop along to some of these events, provoke conversations internally, celebrate diversity. I think that's really, really important. Tai Pawb itself is hosting a Let's Talk About session on the 16th of February, very specifically on LGBT plus History Month. We'd welcome landlords and tenants to join us in that safe space. There's a useful website with resources, LGBT plus History Month.co.uk. We can get that link to you. But aside from History Month, events are usually held, as you probably know, nationwide in the summer, coinciding with what's meant to be better weather. Owing to the pandemic, we haven't had a national pride in Cardiff in Wales since 2019, but that is a superb family orientated and fun event to come together, celebrate diversity in all its forms. Some organisations also hold their own mini pride events through tea parties and other sorts of gatherings. The list of celebration ideas is endless, and rainbow flags go some way to capturing the vibrancy and the positivity of anything pride orientated, but it's just important that people recognise and have an opportunity to come together to take stock and to celebrate diversity.
Right, so lots of good ideas and practical ways that tenants can and landlords can support not just that month, but throughout the year as well. So Ross, just to say a big thank you for joining us today and sharing some of that really useful information. I'm sure people will go away and look at that subject further and see what they can do to support LGBTQ plus History Month. Thank you, Ross.
Thanks, David, and diolch am y gwahoddiad. Thank you very much.
Right.